Welcome to the Immersion Zone. Today we're looking at the blue economy. What is it? And what is the difference between a brown, sustainable, or regenerative blue economy? It's a topic that should be of interest to dive industry professionals because we are part of the blue economy.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're diving deep today into something that's been making waves, the blue economy.
Yeah, it's everywhere, isn't it? A real buzzword. But what does it actually mean?
Well, that's what we're here to uncover.
hmm
Everyone seems to be talking about the blue economy, so we want to take a good look at where it all started and, more importantly, where it's going, especially for anyone who loves the ocean, like divers.
Absolutely. It seems to be changing all the time, too, right? Like, what we understand as the blue economy today might be totally different from what it was, say, a decade ago.
Right. So for this deep dive, we've gathered some really interesting research to trace that evolution and to see how a crucial part of the ocean tourism, and even more specifically scuba diving, fits into this changing landscape.
Sounds like we have a lot to cover.
We do. So let's just get right to it. When we talk about the blue economy, it's helpful to understand where it all began with what some call the brown-blue economy. Now, we're not talking about polluted waters here.
No, not literally brown.
Exactly. Brown refers to the old-school industries tied to the ocean, things like fishing, shipping, oil and gas extraction, even the very early forms of tourism. The main goal, pure economic output. Boosting that blue GDP, often with a business-as-usual approach. Our sources point out this initial perspective was very much human-centered. What can the ocean do for us? And it's sometimes used interchangeably with the broader term ocean economy.
But the thing is, that mindset didn't always consider the limits of our ocean resources. Think of those massive fishing operations they hauled in huge catches, yeah? But it led to overfishing and ultimately hurt the industry and the ecosystem in the long run.
You're spot on. And that realization, that understanding of the ocean's limits, that's exactly what spurred the shift towards a more sustainable blue economy. Several UN reports we looked at emphasize this newer concept. It's about finding a way to have economic growth and social inclusion, but without destroying the environment in the process.
It's like realizing that the ocean's health is directly tied to our well-being. They're not separate issues. And a lot of the focus, at least initially, was on small island developing states, or SIDs, and coastal least developed countries, or LDCs, because they're the ones who are hit hardest by ocean degradation and climate change.
Right. They rely on healthy oceans probably more than anyone. And then building on this whole idea of sustainability, we're now seeing a really cool concept emerge. The regenerative blue economy. This is where things get really exciting. It's not just about minimizing harm. It's about actively healing and restoring the ocean.
Like reversing the damage that's been done.
Exactly. This regenerative approach really changes the game. Think ocean positive initiatives, which some of our research highlighted, or the goals of the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework.
That's basically a global plan to protect and restore nature.
Yeah. The idea is to create a carbon-free system that actually has a net positive impact on the ocean.
Yeah.
So we're not just slowing down the harm, we're trying to undo it.
And that means taking a hard look at what kinds of activities are acceptable in the future. Things like oil extraction and deep sea mining, for example. They just don't fit in this regenerative vision.
Right. They go against the grain of carbon reduction, and they risk harming delicate ecosystems. All right, let's switch gears now and talk about a big player in the blue economy, tourism.
Tourism. Big business, especially for those SIs we were talking about.
For sure. It's a long-standing ocean industry. And for a lot of those island nations, tourism isn't just important, it's their lifeline.
Seriously, though, right?
Right.
We saw that for most of them, it makes up over 30% of their total exports, and in some cases, it's a whopping 80%.
That's incredible. It shows you just how reliant they are on tourism. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. The impact of tourism isn't the same across the board. Some SIDs are tourism hotspots, while others see much less activity. And that creates its own set of issues to address.
Makes sense. So how does this tie into sustainable tourism and this blue tourism idea we see popping up?
Right, so that's where blue tourism comes in. It's about shifting away from that mass tourism model, those huge beach resorts and massive cruise ships, and moving towards something that's gentler on the environment and more beneficial for local communities. Small-scale eco-lodges or community-run tourism initiatives.
That's a great point. If you do it right, blue tourism could be a real win-win for SIDs. Healthy ecosystems attract tourists, and then the money from tourism can be used to protect those ecosystems.
Exactly, a positive feedback loop. But, and this is really important, Our sources emphasize the need to balance the demands of tourism with the needs of local communities, especially when it comes to resources.
And waste management, too.
Oh yeah, definitely. Waste management is a huge issue. And we also can't forget about the looming threat of climate change. It's a major concern for SIDs because rising sea levels and increasingly powerful storms can completely wipe out tourist infrastructure and the natural beauty that attracts visitors in the first place.
Talk about vulnerability. So building resilience isn't just about the environment, it's an economic imperative for these regions. They need it to survive, really.
Absolutely. And now let's zoom in on a very specific type of blue tourism, scuba diving tourism. I mean, when it's done right, scuba diving can be a fantastic example of how tourism can actually help the ocean.
Especially when you think about sustainability and that regenerative approach we talked about.
Exactly. It allows people to connect with the underwater world on a personal level.
You see the beauty of coral reefs and marine life firsthand, and it can really make you want to protect them.
You get it, but, and there's always a but, right? Our research also points out that if scuba diving isn't managed properly, it can actually do more harm than good.
Makes sense. It's not all good vibes just because you're underwater.
For sure. Think about divers who haven't mastered their buoyancy controls. They could easily damage delicate corals. Or too many divers in one spot could disturb marine animals. So yeah, the well-managed part is absolutely key.
It's a balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, how do you make sure scuba diving tourism benefits everyone, both financially and environmentally?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Well, according to our research, there's a huge opportunity for scuba diving tourism to boost local economies. Think about all the jobs it creates, the dive operators, the guides, all the local businesses that cater to divers. It's a real economic engine.
Right. And while the sources didn't specifically say this, it makes sense that dive fees or permits could be used to fund marine protected areas. So tourism money goes directly back into protecting the ocean.
That's smart. When locals see the benefits of a healthy ocean through activities like diving, they're more likely to want to protect it. Conservation becomes an economic asset.
Makes total sense, but we have to be realistic about how many divers these sites can handle. We can't have hordes of people descending on delicate reefs without causing damage.
Right. That's why having things like strict no-touch policies, mandatory buoyancy checks, and clear rules about interacting with marine life is so important.
It's about finding that sweet spot, right? Where everyone benefits, but the environment doesn't suffer. Education is key too, both for dive operators and for divers themselves.
Definitely. And speaking of the future, our research highlights some interesting trends in blue tourism that could really shake things up for scuba diving. We're seeing a huge surge in interest in nature-based and adventure tourism.
Big time. Adventure tourism is already valued at least at $420 billion globally. And adventure tourists, especially a group our sources called spontaneous adventurers, tend to shell out more cash for unique and authentic experiences.
And that opens up a world of possibilities for dive operators to offer high-value, low-impact experiences that really connect people with the ocean. Think exploration, learning, and real engagement with the marine environment.
Totally. It's a niche market with huge potential. And of course, we can't talk about the future without mentioning technology and digitalization. Even though our research didn't dive deep into specifics for diving, it's easy to imagine how technology can play a role.
Totally. I can see online platforms making it easier for travelers to find eco-conscious dive operators, and digital dive logs could cut down on paper waste. Maybe even underwater monitoring technology could help with reef management.
So many possibilities. Imagine using virtual reality to teach people about conservation before they even get wet. Or super high-tech underwater cameras that let researchers and, everyday divers collect data on reef health.
That's amazing. All right, before we surface from this deep dive, let's recap what we've learned. We started with the blue economy's evolution, from a narrow focus on economic output to the growing need for sustainability, and now this exciting vision of regeneration where we actively work to heal the ocean.
And for those small island developing states, tourism is a major part of that equation. Blue tourism, as we discussed, offers a more sustainable way forward because it focuses on minimizing harm and boosting local benefits. And within that, scuba diving tourism, when it's done right, can be a win-win for both the economy and the ocean.
Right. It all comes down to balance, though. We have to be mindful of tourism's impact on the environment and take steps to protect it, especially with climate change in the mix. It's a shared responsibility, really.
I couldn't agree more. It requires everyone, governments, tour operators, local communities, and even individual travelers to work together. We have to understand that healthy oceans equal thriving coastal communities. They're two sides of the same coin.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. As a traveler or as a diver, how can your choices help build a truly regenerative blue economy, an economy that ensures our oceans are healthy for generations to come? And what kind of cool, innovative solutions can we come up with to make scuba diving even better for the ocean and for the communities that rely on it? It's something to think about, and we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
Thanks for joining us.
Dive safe.
Thanks for listening, and please subscribe to The Immersion Zone wherever you are listening to this or at www.theimmersionzone.com. Thanks. Dive safe.